Welcome to Keeping Up at the Capitol. I'm your host, State Senator Tom Casperson. We're coming to you from the Senate studio in Lansing with monthly programming aimed at introducing you to a variety of issues, events, and people. Today our guests are Jason Wadaga and Wyatt Eisenberger. Welcome to our viewers and welcome to our guests. I guess to get started, I'm going to have each one of you maybe give us a little background of who you are, where you came from, and then we can start out with where we're heading.
I'm Jason Wadaga. I'm Chief of Staff to State Senator Rick Jones, who is from the Grand Ledge area. That's just outside of Lansing. Born and raised in Baraga, Michigan, and I am a graduate of Northern Michigan University.
My name is Wyatt Eisenberger. I'm originally from Escanaba, Michigan. I moved downstate probably 2 years ago. I'm currently going to Michigan State, James Madison, and I interned for your office, a lobbyist firm in Lansing, and also Representative Matt Coogie's office in the end of last summer.
Now, it's my understanding both of you could have had other options, but for some reason you ended up here in Lansing doing what you're doing. Maybe I'll start with you, Wyatt. You know, what brought you here? How did this all unfold for you?
I don't know how many options I really had outside of Lansing. It's more so a convenience to be in Lansing. As a student going to Michigan State, it's only a 7 to 10 minute commute to come to Lansing, gain a lot of work experience, and just make a lot of connections for the future.
Jason?
Yeah, I went to college wanting to be a teacher, went to Northern wanting to be a teacher, and took a political science class my first year and fell in love with poli-sci and immediately changed my major and ended up taking a job in a campaign in Lansing, and I've been below the bridge ever since. I've kind of fallen in love with politics and that career path, and I've always told people I'm not smart enough to do anything else.
I'm going to start with you, Jason. You've got a little more history here. Lansing sometimes can have some downsides to it too. With your path that you've taken, you know, maybe tell us a little bit about that. Explain to us a little bit of the downside that you've run into.
Yeah, it does. There's definitely, you definitely have your good and bad days like any job. I think the most frustration that we have in our job is when you spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, put a lot of hard work into something, whether it be a bill or a campaign. Recently for me it's been legislation, and ultimately you come up short and you don't get that legislation signed into law. I know I've worked with you in the past in the House on bills that we've come up short on. But at the same time, in my time in the legislature, I've had legislation bills that ultimately were signed into law for bosses that I work for. I've had two bill signings with 2 different governors, so I've been fortunate. So you got to take the good with the bad and the disappointment. You know, sometimes it's not always disappointment. There's definitely, you know, big moments and good moments when you work hard.
Yeah, you talked about the bill signings and not getting to the finish line with some of it. I can relate to that, and like you said, you and I have worked on some things together. The one thing I've noticed with that, though, is that I do believe the system does work, and there's a lot of checks and balances. I mean, would you agree that when you watch that, I may not get what I want, or in your case, you know, working with who you were working with, they didn't get quite to where they wanted, but you know, the votes were there, and they voted against us in a sense. We didn't get enough votes, but the system, I think, is a good system, the way with the checks and balances.
Right, it is. You're exactly right. You know, there's a process, and it's frustrating for people at home sometimes who can't figure out why things can't get done and why things take so long to get done. But in a way, that's good. You don't want things. You don't want things to happen in 3 days around here where nobody knows what's going on, and all of a sudden it's the law of the state or the law of the land. It's the democracy, and that's the process that we have, and it's the best process there is. And sometimes it's slow, and sometimes it's frustrating, but it's also, you know, it's a good thing too.
Yeah. Wyatt, you come with a different perspective because you were working as an intern. I know you worked in our office, did a great job, by the way. Appreciate everything you did. But you've worked in legislative offices as interns, and I believe you also worked in a lobby firm as an intern. What were some of the ups and downs?
Well, it's not quite as elaborate as Jason's.
Sorry, I got a wire on you. Remember the answer. What are some of the ups and downs? That's where we're going to go. Sorry, guys.
How's it going?
Go good.
I'm comfortable now. I ran my mouth a little bit.
Once we get past that garbage, we're in good shape.
Yep.
All right, I'll say go, and Wyatt, you say what things were comfortable and what things were not. All right, sir, when you're ready.
Well, my answer is not going to be quite as elaborate as Jason's, but as far as disappointments go, as an intern, the majority of internships in Lansing are unpaid. That means you're sacrificing a lot of your time to come into Lansing, help out a legislator, and just, I mean, not really sacrificing, but there's other things you could be doing academically, socially. So that was one of the disappointments. Also, I didn't have direct involvement with a lot of legislation that was being pushed through, but I saw disappointment when there was kind of holdups in either the House or Senate. So those were the disappointments working in Lansing.
You know, you bring the pay thing up, and I would agree, and in the interns we've had have all done a great job, worked very hard. My hope would be that the rewards would ultimately come out through that hard work and the effort, that it gets noticed. And then ultimately there are options and opportunities from that. I know we've had several of our interns that have ultimately gone on to be legislative staff because they've done just a wonderful job as an intern. They, in a sense, it was their proving ground. They were able to come in, really showed what they were made of. And for the most part, interns do that because they're not getting paid, and yet they come in with a good attitude, as you did for us. But I appreciate, you know, the work you put into it.
I would definitely agree with that statement, and I think it's extremely important to build your resume as a college student, and having a state senator, a state representative, and a lobbyist firm on your resume definitely does help for jobs in the future.
Sure. Jason, the role you play now with Senator Jones, not every staff person in an office plays the same role. Maybe describe a little bit of what is your role for the senator, and if you could tell us a little bit about how you got there. I know, you know, I've known you for a while, so I know you've gone through different avenues and worked different positions to ultimately now end up where you are today.
Yeah. My job as chief of staff is first and foremost is I oversee the office. I oversee the personnel in the office and the day-to-day operations. My boss is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, which is a very, very busy committee. So a majority of my time is working on legislation for the Judiciary Committee, setting an agenda for the Judiciary Committee, vetting everything that goes through the Judiciary Committee, because we're dealing with important issues. Not that every issue isn't important, but these are legal things that are going to affect everybody's life. So a majority of my time is that committee. But I also work on other legislation for my boss, things that we have outside of judiciary. I answer any constituent question that has to do with bills that I'm working on in the office. We have another gentleman in the office who also works on legislation outside of judiciary, but we work in tandem to get responses back to constituents, whether it be in our district or anywhere across the state, as to what the bills do. So that's a majority of my time. I do some communications work for him. I do a lot of appearances for him. We're lucky enough now. We're in a much different situation than you. Our district is right outside of the Capitol here, so I have the opportunity to go to district events in the weekends and also in the evenings, sometimes in the morning, to represent my boss when he can't be there. As far as how I got to where I'm at, you know, I think I did what's typical of anybody. Is I started at the bottom. We started with long hours, low pay, and you got to build yourself up to get to where you're at, and you've got to work hard and you've got to be noticed. So you know, I just did what I had to do, worked as hard as I could, and was hopeful and that it would ultimately pay off, which it has to this point.
If I could follow up just for a second on that, because I know your past, and I know you also worked in a legislative office. You were in the House side too. Just curious if, coming from the staff side of things, notice any difference between the Senate and the House?
Yeah, I do. Although it's changed a little bit because so many guys that were in the House, so many of the legislators that were in the House when I was there are now in the Senate. So a lot of the staff has come with, but there's always been that that feeling that the Senate is a little more mature and a little bit more deliberate with things. Whereas,
could you tell my wife that?
Well, so I was going to say I fit in better in the House actually, but with my maturity level, but. You know, you've got a 4-year term in the Senate, you've got a 2-year term in the House, so things move quicker in the House. There's typically, on the staff side, it's a lot younger in the House, there's a lot more of them, and they come in a lot quicker, so you've got younger staff, And it's just, I don't think either one's better or worse. I think they balance each other out pretty well.
They do. And one thing I just want to talk a little bit about from my perspective as being the elected official, having people work with me. The hours, you mentioned the hours and the low pay, I couldn't agree more. I don't think a lot of folks understand the staff that support the elected officials and the work they put into this stuff is incredible. And I think, Wyatt, you come down as an intern, you had to have seen that in the office. We go late for session, my staff stays. They're there with me, and the phone calls and the emails, and we're communicating. And Jason, I think you would know this as well as anybody. When you leave here on Friday, you're still hooked up all the way through the weekend. I know with my staff, we're communicating all the time. Things come up, and never have I ever heard any complaining or anything like that. The staff here have just been wonderful. The legislative staff in Lansing, I think, is second to none with the effort they put forth. I mean, would you have seen that as?
I would definitely agree. Considering that I worked in the Senate and then had an opportunity to hop over to the House at the end of last summer, I definitely see the enormous amount of work that's put upon an individual, especially in the House, because they only have 2 people in the offices, where your chief of staff is also your legislative assistant. Person answering your phones is your scheduler and constituent relations, and it is a lot of work for the hours they put in. I would go in at 9 in the morning and leave at 5, and most of the time they weren't out of there until 8 o'clock at night.
A lot of people did that, and I appreciate the work that you've done. Let's talk a little bit about the Upper Peninsula, the Yooper side of this thing. I think all of us can relate to that. A lot of times in the Upper Peninsula, there's this misnomer that the guys below the bridge, are pretty rough guys. The trolls is some of the terms we've used. All of us have come down here now from our lives in the UP and experienced it down here. Any thoughts? I see people that I don't want to say we're judgmental or anything like that, but yet you come down with a certain expectation. And then for me, when I got down here, it was a lot different. And there's so many good people trying to do good work, no matter if UP or Lower Michigan. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I came below the bridge, I certainly had some preconceived notions about people below the bridge. Not that I hadn't met any before or wasn't friends with any, but they have their feelings of us, and we have our feelings of them. But you get down here and you meet people, and I think I always defend people from the Upper Peninsula, but there's some good people down here. My first day at the House of Representatives in 2005, I met a gentleman in one of the legislative offices who I came to know really well, and who Rory Lafferty, and ultimately ended up being the best man in his wedding. And I only knew the guy for 3 years. We just got along so well that we. He was from below the bridge. I'm from the UP, but we just had a similar backgrounds and got along really well. So there is that. You have to get to know the people, and you have to, and you do realize that they are more like you than you think they might have been. But I'll always defend my Yoopers and say that we're just a little bit better.
Appreciate that. Wyatt, any perspective from the UP down here?
Yeah, definitely. When I first started working in Lansing, I really didn't have an idea of how many people from the UP were actually working here. And over the summer, I began to sit in a lot more meetings, and I met a significant amount of people from the UP. And I don't think a lot of people from the UP actually realize that it's not only your senators and representatives that are representing you, it's people that work for lobbyist firms or other firms or private sector industries around Lansing that have a significant positive impact on life in the UP.
One of the things too, we're talking about the staff a little bit and how hard they work. I was fortunate in the House, and she's still with me, Linda, who ran my front desk. I didn't see this a lot, but we actually had an experience where Linda actually got a letter to the editor, praising her work. And I really appreciated that, because a lot of times as an elected official, you'll go back to district and people are appreciative if you get something done or fix a problem that they have. And a lot of times we get the kudos for it. And you folks are sitting in the background and probably did most of the lion's share of the work on it. And ultimately got it done. And because it was reflective on me or my office, I get the credit. Any thoughts on that? I mean, you had to have seen some of that in your time in the House.
Yeah, there's, there have been times where people will catch your boss and pull them aside and say, hey, you know, your staffer did a great job on this. But typically, the praise goes to the sitting representative. But at the same time, most of the blame goes to the sitting representative too. So if I make a mistake in my office, typically my name doesn't come up, my boss's does. And we all know Linda in your office and how hard of work she does. And we tried to steal her from you a couple of years ago.
You did.
She does a great job. But you know, it goes both ways like anything, and it doesn't really bother me. You know, if my boss is happy with me, that's a good thing.
Sure. How about a little hypothetical? We're heading into a classroom, young kids, high school kids. With your experience, what you've experienced so far down here, and if they wanted you to talk about your experience or government in general, what would you share with the kids? What?
If I was walking into a high school classroom, I would definitely say if you're passionate about politics and you want to learn more, and you're going to be around the area, either Michigan State, Michigan, one of the bigger universities around here, working at the Capitol is definitely an experience. It's like I said before, it's a great reference builder. You can meet a lot of really nice people, and it's a great experience. I'm glad I did it. While I was doing it, I wasn't so happy because, like I said before, it is an unpaid internship, which a lot of people don't realize. But it was a great experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, the three things I've told people, I've had a handful of people from my hometown or just people I've met that have asked me what the route I should take is, and I think the three things: number one, to do an internship in Lansing. All legislators are looking for as much free help as they can get. So I would say Wyatt's certainly on the right route, doing that with 2 internships in the legislature and 1 at a lobbying firm. He's getting great experience and great exposure, and it's something I never did and regret to this day that I didn't start with an internship. The second thing I would tell people is to work on a campaign in your local community. Whether it be state rep, state senate, U.S. Senate, governor, whatever it might be, it's the best way for people who are already established in this job to see your skills and your work ethic. That's the route I went, was to work on a campaign. And the third thing I would say I would always recommend, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is that you have to expect to start at the bottom and work your way up. It's very competitive in Lansing. You're not going to fall into a high-paying job. You've got to work yourself up from the bottom, and you got to prove that you're good at it. But in the end, you know, I've been very blessed and very thankful for where I am right now. So it's worth it. You know, it's worth it. But those are the 3 main things I would tell any high school student or college student looking to get in politics.
One of the things that I'd like to talk a little bit about with staff is the fact that the public doesn't get to see this because you guys are working behind the scenes with most of what you do. But what I've noticed, and especially coming from the Upper Peninsula, because we have the whole upper floor on the 14th floor in the house, there's whether you're a Democrat or Republican, and the show isn't designed to promote one or the other, but whether you are one or the other, it seems what I've witnessed with staff and the people working down here is when it comes to common issues within our districts, the staff seem to communicate extremely well, and they share information. I think the staff, for the most part, have done a pretty good job of rising above the partisanship. There's a time for that, but what's your thoughts on that? Have you seen that? I mean, I've witnessed that where our staff are communicating with each other, and they're not talking in terms of Republican, Democrat. They're just talking about the issue, and here's what we've got.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience with that. With our boss, my boss's district being close to the Capitol, most of the Lansing area is represented by the other party. But when those issues matter to your constituents, that that party stuff goes out the window, and you got to do what's best for your people, and that, like you said, we've got to share information, we've got to work together, we've got to build a coalition. So it's a lot less partisan here than maybe people would think it is. We do what we think is best for our constituents, and a lot of times that involves working with people on the other side of the aisle.
Sure.
I definitely agree with what Jason has said. If it's an issue that matters to the Upper Peninsula, because people from the UP, as you both know, have a kind of unique values opposed to people from the Lower Peninsula, and they are willing to work together. I know working in the House and in your office, there was a lot of discussion with the representatives, in your case, about how can we get this bill out, because I know it's going to positively affect the Upper Peninsula. We can, the fastest way possible, we can do this efficiently and have everybody get a good look at it. So I definitely agree that there's a strong relationship between staffers and representatives and senators from the UP.
You kind of come from, I'm throwing a little curve at you here, but you come from a little unique experience with your internships with the lobby firms that you interned with. Did you see any of that in the sense of people that are trying to help their clients as far as their issues are concerned and educate us on what's going on? They have to be very good at not pulling the partisan card either. They have to talk about the issue, and they, for the most part, I think they do pretty well down here. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, exactly. They just want to talk about the issue. Did you experience any of that?
I did. I'm not really sure how much detail I can go into on that issue, but yeah, the lobbyists, that they not only work with Republicans and Democrats, but they work with each other. I was fortunate enough to sit in a lot of meetings this summer with the lobbyists and representatives and senators, floor leaders, things like that, and then also if there was a bill going through and they had common clients, lobbyists would have most of the time sit down and discuss what kind of tactic they were going to do to get the law or legislation passed.
Now we got to get into a really important issue, and it needs to be discussed, clear the air, whatever, however you want to say it. There is a little bit of partisanship down here, and we debate many times liberal and conservative ideas, and I think the big issue we really debate, though, is who really has the better football team, and maybe we could have some insight on that. Maybe start with Jason.
Yeah, I'm glad. I think this is the perfect episode for you to bring this up, considering we've got two kids from the UP here. I just wanted to remind people in the UP who probably don't know this that in 1962, the Dallas Cowboys held their training camp at Northern Michigan University, which was, I think, Northern Michigan College at the time. That was their third year as a franchise, and they came to the Upper Peninsula. And I think that us Upers need to do a better job of supporting America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. And the last time I checked, the Cowboys have 5 Super Bowls, and I think your Packers have 4. So until they catch us, I think we need to do a better job of remembering the history of the Dallas Cowboys.
Touché, Jason. Wyatt, we need some input here. You might be the tiebreaker. I'm not sure.
I'm going to kind of feel like a traitor coming from the UP, but because I'm a citizen of Michigan, I'm going to have to say that I'm a Lions fan. But Green Bay does have a very strong franchise. I will say that.
Would it be safe to say that Green Bay has a special place in your heart?
At one point they did.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
At one point they did.
And for what it's worth, I have nothing against the Detroit Lions. We wish them all the best, but as a young boy watching Bart Starr punch that football through in the Ice Bowl against the Dallas Cowboys, it's pretty obvious where our loyalties lie. And in the Upper Peninsula, I'm a little bit surprised because for the most part it's Green Bay flags that are flying on top of the cars. So I don't know where your loyalty's been misplaced, Jason, but for the most part I think you're a pretty good guy. But
well, you can blame my father for that, and unfortunately every time Dallas and Green Bay plays I have to see the replay of the Ice Bowl. I wasn't alive for it, but I'm still pretty sure that Bart Starr didn't get in.
Well, our time is up, so we're going to wrap this up, but I want to thank Wyatt. Jason, I want to thank you for coming into the studio and doing this, just kind of educating maybe some folks, some of our viewers, as to what takes place and what you got to do if you have an interest in this to get involved and get into the field of government. And so I want to thank you and appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
And to our viewers, we appreciate your time with us, and we look forward to joining you here again. I'm Tom Casperson, and this has been Keeping Up at the Capitol.